Well, as we've been mentioning, COP30 is underway in Belém in Brazil. The leaders of China, India and the United States, responsible for nearly half of global emissions, are not in attendance. President Xi Jinping won't be there, but China is sending a large delegation. As the world's biggest polluter, China's role remains critical. The country is also leading the clean energy push, installing more renewables and rolling out more electric vehicles than any other country. The key question now is, can China produce enough green technology to power its own transition and help the world reach net zero? Selena Sykes has more.
On hills, in fields, or in the desert. In China, solar panels are as far as the eye can see.
2 years ago, there was nothing here but desert. We've installed 6 million solar panels, 2 million of them in less than 6 months. We can produce 500 million kilowatt hours, enough to power 4.5 million homes for a whole year.
China is the world's biggest emitter of planet-warming greenhouse gases, but is also spearheading a clean energy revolution. Beijing is installing more solar and wind capacity than the rest of the world combined, and is putting more electric cars on its roads than any other country. Almost half of new cars were electric battery-powered or plug-in hybrids last year, according to the International Energy Agency. A pivot to cleaner alternatives at home and also abroad, as China's energy strategy is about more than saving the planet.
On the surface, it is an environmental and climate issue, but in reality it is closely related to economic development, industrial investment, international trade, and deployment of new markets and technologies.
In 2024, China manufactured 92% of the world's solar modules and 82% of wind turbines, according to think tank Bruegel, while it accounts for over 70% of global production in the electric vehicle market. Around the world, China is using clean energy clout to build or expand political and economic relationships. Since 2023, Chinese companies have announced $168 billion in foreign investments in clean energy, according to Climate Energy Finance. A domination in clean energy industries that is crucial to the world's green transition. For the first time, China has committed to reducing its emissions by 7 to 10% by 2035. A welcome development from the world's biggest emitter. But experts say greater cuts need to be made if the planet is to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or even well below 2 degrees Celsius.
We're going to talk more on this now with Chris Aylett, who is a research fellow in the Environment and Society Centre at Chatham House. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the programme. Thank you for your time. So as we were hearing there, China is very much becoming a world leader in green energy. Any idea from you why Xi Jinping is not going to be attending COP30?
It's a good question. I would say that political sort of significance of attending summits like COP30 is always to an extent relative. And you mentioned China's NDC commitments of 7 to 10%. As you also say, many people thought that was really nowhere near enough, and actually that China is likely to do a lot more. And the analysis really is that when you've got the world's biggest historical emitter, the United States, having really backed out, China really is in a position where it can do an amount, continue on its path, make its commitments, keep calm and carry on, as we might say in the UK, and it will still be seen in a really, really positive light. It surprised me slightly that President Xi didn't go to COP. It would have been nice, but I don't think it necessarily has a great deal of symbolism. China is quite clearly very committed to to tackling climate change and the green transition for reasons, including avoiding its own climate vulnerabilities, but also economic, strategic, as mentioned, and also energy security, which is that China, as a importer of fossil fuels, is very keen to reduce its reliance, and that's been one of the driving forces behind its clean tech revolution at home.
Well, as we've been mentioning, China is very much leading in this area. It's home to the world's half of the world's solar, half of the world's wind power, half of the world's electric cars. Describe to our audience just how much of a role China is playing in the world's climate trajectory now.
It's impossible to overstate it. It's absolutely gigantic. As is well known, China is the world's largest emitter, so accounting for around a third of global emissions, quite significantly more than the second largest current emitter, which is the United States, which is on around sort of 10 to 12%. So that means the extent to which China brings its emissions down and how fast has a really material impact on the extent of climate change that we're likely to see in the coming years, decades, and even centuries to a certain extent. So there's that aspect, the extent to which they bring their own emissions down. Then there is the fact that it has really rolled out this sort of clean tech manufacturing behemoth at home to the extent that it's able to supply abroad at really, really low cost. And what we're seeing is countries around the world taking China up on its offer of like cheap solar panels in particular, but also batteries and increasingly electric vehicles. Not always because they're intending to meet their climate goals, or sometimes that is obviously a nice kind of side effect. But in the case of solar panels and batteries, it's for energy security. It's basically to sort of displace fossil fuels in their mix, particularly if they're having to import from abroad. In the case of large swathes of Africa, it's simply energy access. It's a very cheap and quick and easy way, basically, to get people connected. And yeah, I think from those two dimensions, basically the fact that China is the world's largest emitter, but it's also the world's largest sort of supplier of the solutions, as it were. It's really a crucial part of the fight against climate change, and in my view, it's important that we account for that and we work with China to tackle this common challenge.
Well, Chris, there is a sense that China is very much stepping into the void left by the US. And many are looking at this dynamic and argue that this shouldn't be the case because it allows the US to escape its responsibility as the world's biggest historical emitter. What's your view on that?
I think, well, yes, basically, it's really shocking that the US is able to do this, to have this historical responsibility, and to basically say we are washing our hands of it, and in fact doing a little more than washing their hands of it. They are also being deliberately disruptive. We saw this at the International Maritime Organization just a few weeks ago, where they were trying to pass a new deal on decarbonising shipping, and that was basically disrupted and taken off the agenda by the United States in quite an undiplomatic way, according to reports. They're also obviously Donald Trump is very keen to sell American fossil fuels and has been kind of striking quite stringent deals with Japan and the European Union to purchase lots and lots of American fossil fuels. So the US has really kind of flipped, and in the past the US has been a major player in climate diplomacy and has been responsible, along with China as well, for some impressive achievements. But now, yeah, it is up to other countries, not just China, basically, to come together and basically work on this problem. And what's interesting now is it's not necessarily about kind of setting targets, setting the direction of travel and negotiating. It's really about sort of getting down to it and making sure that we do roll out the solutions, make the changes we need, implement the policies. And I think that's something that China has really focused on for a long time. It feels like it wants to set its targets, as it did with its sort of dual carbon reduction targets back in 2021, and then pursue action to put them into place. So what we're hoping to see at Belém is a kind of all of those countries that are committed to tackling climate change coming together and announcing initiatives and making commitments to work on specific practical things that are actually going to bring down emissions and also adapt to the consequences of climate change in their respective countries. And there's actually quite a lot of interesting, positive things going on in that regard. But yeah, the sort of mantle of leadership is a tricky one because in the sort of UNFCCC COP framework, China is still classified as a developing country, and the idea that it comes with a slightly different set of responsibilities than the developed countries that have contributed more to the problems. There's always been, from the Chinese side, a reluctance sort of say we're leaders in this. But I think de facto, with what they're doing on clean energy and some of their sort of policy frameworks and so on, they are becoming a type of leader. And certainly other countries are looking towards them for leadership and for signs of hope in quite a bleak situation otherwise.
It is a weird dynamic because while China is making this rapid build-up of renewable energy, its coal sector has also seen a huge surge in investment over the past 2 years to the highest level in a decade. The country still has a long way to go, it seems.
That's absolutely right. The continued reliance on coal and the continued building of new coal-fired power plants is a concern. In the 15th five-year plan, which covers the period 2026 to 2030, there is a commitment to gradually reduce the amounts of coal in China's energy mix. But there's not a lot of clarity around how that's going to be done. And obviously there is concern about the fact that once you sort of build new power stations, then there's some sort of incentive and imperative to use them. I would say that there is what you tend to find in China compared to other countries is what's called the capacity factor, basically the extent to which a coal-fired power plant or another generator is used, is actually pretty low. So you could build out coal-fired power plants, but if they're not actually used that often, you're not emitting as much as you otherwise would be. And there's certainly a overarching concern in China about energy security. I mean, basically sort of keeping the lights on. So part of that build out of coal has been to, make absolutely sure that while they're building the new system, which is going to be based on renewables and batteries, they can still keep the electricity flowing. So it is a bit of a nuanced situation, but nevertheless, I think I and many other sort of watchers are hoping to see signs of China's coal consumption starting to fall in the coming years.
Well, we hope that will happen. Chris, thank you so much for giving us your analysis on this topic. It's great to have you on the programme today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.